Jen. And I'm Sawyer. And you're listening to Our House, A to Z.
Really?
Yep. Do you have a parent that sneezes like multiple times?
I don't know. I don't think so. My dad just sneezes crazy loud. Like shakes the house loud.
That's how my dad is, and I have one sister that does that. And then, you're not recording, are you?
I just started. I'm trying to get his mic checked.
Yeah.
So
I was talking about sneezes, right? So
what's more interesting than that?
Yeah, because Ashley sneezes 12 times.
I sneeze a lot of times
One
in a row,
for each disciple.
and everybody knows that, and everyone's like, oh,
Yeah.
oh, are you coughing? I'm
Like,
no, I'm not
yeah.
coughing. I'm sneezing. It's just the way it is.
Yeah. So I'll sneeze when I put a piece of gum in at first.
Oh, yeah.
Or strong mint.
Yep.
Right off the bat,
And I
I'll
put mint
sneeze.
in.
Yep.
Interesting.
I don't
Right
know
off
how
the
I
bat. But I don't
feel
think I
about
don't
that.
think my parents do that.
The multiple sneezes? Mm-mm. I have one other sister that sneezes a whole bunch of times in a row. My mom does the same thing. You are the loud sneezer.
But I only sneeze once.
Yep.
Nah, sometimes a lot. If there's like a cat.
One big sneeze.
If there's a cat within the 50-mile
Radius,
radius,
yep.
then I will.
Yeah. Yep. I'm the same way with those cats.
Yeah, well, they're not of the Lord, but we'll save that for another podcast.
Oh,
Probably.
that'd be a great podcast.
I think so.
I'd record that one.
We'd lose a whole bunch of followers, cat people.
That's all right.
We do have some cat lovers.
They need Jesus.
A lot of cat lovers.
We do. It's true.
I just don't get it.
One of your favorite lines, Micah. Agree to disagree.
Okay.
Different's just different.
Speaking of agreeing and disagreeing, we want to introduce our guests. For those that were not here on Friday night,
Yeah.
Micah and Bethany Marshall were here and shared with a group of our parents of Gen Z and Gen Alpha just a lot of really cool information. And when I say a lot, it was literally a book that you were handing out of information on why they are the way they are and what makes them that way. Yeah, like how they're wired, how they're thinking, what influences them, and how we can become what influences them instead of standing by and watching the world do our job for us.
Yeah.
So it was awesome. We've already had a lot of really good feedback,
Thank you.
and it's really exciting to have you guys on the show with us.
Yeah.
So welcome.
So welcome Bethany and Micah to the Our House podcast.
Yes.
Can you guys give like 2-minute just who you are, where you're from? We know Micah through Zion.
Yeah.
We're Zac's alma mater, the Zion. We have a lot of Zionians around here.
That's right.
It's like a Zion reunion when you showed up here.
Zion Unite. I know it is. I forget about it until somebody from Zion comes by and we start walking down the hallways and it's like, oh, we went to school with them.
Know them.
Yep.
It's like right, left,
It's
left.
very
Like
weird.
everyone you're walking down. Yeah.
It's very weird.
It's awesome.
Yeah, so glad to be here with you guys. I did meet some people from Valley Forge, so I'm
You
representing
did?
the Valley Forge
Hey.
alumni.
Oh,
Wait.
Steve
Yeah.
Gagney.
Wait,
Steve Gagney went
who's
to
from Valley
Forge.
Forge? We need to fire them.
You're fired.
Wasn't it
Just
John's
kidding.
brother?
Yeah,
Your
Steve.
brother-in-law? Steve, yeah. So met him. Super excited to be here. We're from Altoona. We're transplants, though, from Virginia and Pittsburgh area. That's just where God led us, and we're rooted there. And we're just so excited to be up here, though, visiting you guys and seeing what you guys do up here. But we love Altoona. That's where God has placed us, and we're just trying to be as obedient as we can to what God's called us to
good.
do.
And
Yeah.
what are you doing? Tell everybody just a little bit
Yeah.
about what each of you guys kind of do
So
ministry-wise.
currently I'm full-time family life pastor, about to make a transition into something new in the new year, and excited about that. I also lead a daughters conference in Altoona area. We've also traveled to Johnstown and Pittsburgh for it. Just something that God birthed in my heart in 2016 was unite my daughters. A weekend just to spend time with the Lord and to build into women who they are, you know, in Christ, and to really put that daughter hat on, to know who you are in this world. Identity is so important. And when you're rooted and grounded in that, nothing can shake you. And so that's
good.
what that conference is about. That's what God has placed on my heart to do. And I do that and do some mentoring and some discipling. And I love when I get to travel with my husband. We just celebrated our anniversary on Wednesday, 14 years.
14 years.
Yeah. So we love to do things together. So this is super fun.
Yeah, it's so good.
Yeah. So, and then I've been serving in youth ministry for 14 going on 15 years. I've been doing it since I was in college at Zion.
Hey.
My senior year, I was volunteering, and then God took me on a journey. And so we have an organization. It's a nonprofit called Refuge Youth Network, and we basically serve churches who can't afford to have youth pastors. And so smaller churches, larger churches, doesn't really matter. A lot of larger churches, they just like the model in which we run, so they partner with us. And then the smaller churches, we aid them in our region of central Pennsylvania being able to just assist them because they don't have the finances to be able to provide for youth pastors, but they do have kids. And they're like, what do we do? How do we make this work? And it's a very common thing that there's a lot of churches out there that are smaller who would love to be able to have a full-time youth ministry, but they're just not able to.
Right.
So
and then you end up having somebody who's just like on staff filling a role, and it's not their passion.
And it's more of an obligation that they feel, and they just show up
somebody's
and do it.
mom.
Yeah, someone's mom, a Karen who's like
Exactly.
leading in ministry, who
looking for someplace to flex.
Yeah, and so
no Karens allowed.
No Karens allowed. Well, actually, one of our leaders is a Karen, and she's awesome.
Oh, okay.
If you want
She's
a Karen,
allowed.
you want them on your side.
You want this
That's
Karen.
true.
You want
I have a good Karen on my
you want
side
a good Karen on your side. But yeah, so we've been doing that, and we're getting ready to launch our 5th location, so in central Pennsylvania. So it's super exciting. And ministry is a journey. It's an adventure. We celebrate all that God has done, and we're more excited for what he's going to do. But we're happy to be with you guys, hanging out. You guys have visited us twice. So it's good to be up here back in Rhode Island after all those years that I've been gone.
And just for the record, we are actually recording this in Massachusetts. But
That's true.
But you've said
That's
Rhode
true.
Island a lot, and I think people are starting to get the wrong idea. So I just want to clarify that.
Yeah, just making
kidding.
sure. We are in Mass.
We are.
It's the 14th biggest state.
But we did drive by. We drove by Zion. It's dilapidated.
In
It's
Barrington.
looking like
the
a
Barrington
scary,
campus.
like a Halloween kind of haunted campus thing going on.
They could open it and charge Ray some money.
Exactly. Some scary
Especially around
vibes.
this time of year.
Yeah.
So, real quick, any like website information that you could throw out just in case somebody's like, hey, that sounds really cool. Love to support it. Love to learn a little bit more. Where would you send them?
Yeah, so if you go to refugeyouth.network.org, you can get all of our information on there. There is a place for donations that you can give. If you want to give, monthly or one time, you can do that because we are a nonprofit. That's how we raise our money, is through supporters. But the one thing that we also do is we provide curriculum, games, hacks, a bunch of different things for leaders of other youth ministries. We give it all away for free. It doesn't cost anything. You just got to put your email in, and then you get a login, and then you have access to all the things that we do. We're constantly trying to put new material on there, so you can see the curriculum that we're using. If you need some help with hacks and figuring out how to do certain things, how to raise finances for your youth ministry, even games. Like games is a huge thing in youth ministry, and I hate games. Like that's the one thing about it.
You have to have somebody on your team that loves games.
Yeah, and we do, and I'm so glad that we have that. But games is like the most annoying part of the youth ministry that, to me, I'm like, I hate having to figure that out.
And we took you to level 99
Yeah,
yesterday.
we did.
Did you hate it?
No, I loved that.
He doesn't like planning.
I don't like
He doesn't
planning
like planning
it. And so being able to,
He loves to play.
But being able to help resource other ministries and being able to just be able to give back what God has given to you, I feel like that's really what we need to do. There's a lot of people that have said you should charge, you should do this, do that, but I just really feel like we need to be a blessing to others, and so we give everything away for free in what we do.
I love that. I was on your website just recently before you guys came up, and I saw all that stuff, and I was like, wow, this is really cool. Especially I was thinking for up here, because obviously there's no Refuge Youth Network up here.
Yeah.
But I thought it was great. We do have a lot of smaller churches that have smaller youth groups or no youth group at all because they just don't have the resources. So I thought that was really cool and a great resource for people to access.
Cool. Very cool.
Yeah.
All right, and then do you want to talk at all about daughters, Bethany?
She did.
I mean,
While you were rolling over the chords and trying to figure that out behind you, she was sharing all about her daughters.
Next year we're celebrating our 10th one. So next year's a pretty big year for us. That 10 years it's been in existence.
So you've been doing this since you were...
It's really cool to see how God's just
you were 12
continued
years
to been
old.
so faithful and growing. What was that?
I said, so you've been doing this since you were 12 years old. That's like, that's pretty outstanding.
Yeah.
Good deal.
So just to let everybody who's listening know, Bethany and Micah were both raised in strong Christian families. You both have really strong faith backgrounds, from Bethany being a part of a missionary family to Jamaica. Micah's family was pastors, grew up in the church. You shared last night kind of like every day of your life was at church.
Yeah, all the time.
And we can empathize with that with our kids and stuff.
Yeah.
They are here usually more than they're not. So one of the things we wanted to talk about today, and it's kind of cool to hear your perspective, it's something Zac and I have shared about here before on the podcast, but somebody had written in, a good friend of mine actually had written in recently about a topic that she wanted to hear kind of some feedback on or some insight in. And she said, podcast idea, godly dating, how far is too far, boundaries, and remaining pure. And I think that she's also somebody who was raised in a Christian household. And, you know, there's a lot going on around the Christian world about the downfall and the woes of purity culture. Then there was kind of like this whole season where nobody talked about it. And we kind of were sharing a little bit with one another about how there was like a lot of no's, but no reason as to why there were no's. And I think people are just looking for realness and clarity and not trying to figure things out all the time on their own. Yeah, so I kind of wanted to just throw that out there. I love it. She's super straightforward. She's like, how far is too far? Just be straight with me. Like, what is it? Because people are trying to do the right thing. Their heart is to do the right thing. And a lot of times we just don't have the answer on our own.
Yeah. Great question. Great topic. Where do we start?
Where do you start with that?
Right. I think that growing up for me, I was told we don't date, we're courting, and then they introduced the whole courtship.
Yes. I kiss dating goodbye.
I kiss dating goodbye.
Oh, that's a
all
whole
of
nother
that.
podcast.
And, you know, I think it's just a lot of, you know, figuring out for yourself, what are my pre-decided choices and decisions before I even put myself in a situation? What are my core values? What are the standards that I want for myself and my relationship? Because if you don't have those already established, I think you can find yourself in situations and caught up in the moment where you're like trying to decide something in the moment. And then you're like,
There's no deciding in the
there's
moment.
no time to
bueno.
decide in the moment. So I think a lot of it is just like sitting down, even with yourself and the Lord, and just asking, okay, like, what do I want for myself in my relationship? What are we going to say yes to in the future? I think it's like also reframing that of like not thinking of it as a list of no's, but what are you saying yes to? I'm saying yes to saving myself for my wedding night. I'm saying yes to my future husband and honoring him in the season of dating and getting to know him. You know, Micah and I dated long distance, and I think it was really good for our relationship in the dating season of getting to know each other on a deeper level when we're only limited to like phone calls and, you know, conversations where we were able to talk about things just without the temptation or distraction of what in-person dating can be. And
Now, was that before camera phones?
Yeah.
Or was
Well,
that...
it was when there was MySpace.
We met on AOL Instant Messenger.
Get out.
I mean, if you remember that.
Of course.
I mean, I think my screen name was Mr. Micah 31.
Ooh,
Yeah.
Mr.
Well, that has like an alluring mystique to it,
It did.
already.
And
I'm
his
on the hook.
MySpace song was Mr. Maintenance Man.
Tell me what you want, baby.
Yeah,
Country
the
songs.
country song. We were
I
talking
was
about
like-
good country music.
There it is.
I was
versus,
learning.
like,
I was like, ooh, this
country
boy is
music.
really
Yes.
attractive.
I love that.
Oh my gosh.
was it Trace Atkins or something like that?
Something
I
like
can't
that.
remember what it was. Yeah,
I am her mate.
those MySpace days. But we, you know, like Bethany said, we met on AOL and then we Skyped back. What was it, Skype? Yeah, we Skyped for a little bit. But the one thing about dating long distance in that relationship is you really find yourself whether or not you're interested. Because you can only talk so much until you run out of things that you kind of talk about. And if you can organically carry conversations and keep just going into a depth of things, especially spiritual things, you find that you're able to connect more on a deeper level. The longest we ever hung out together before our marriage was probably, 5 or 6 days. And then that was on vacation with my family.
Yeah.
And then up until...
Wait, so the first time you guys hung out for a long period of time was on a family vacation?
Yes.
Yes, for
that
more
was like a true
so
test
for
if
like
our
more
relationship was going to
well,
work.
like for more than 2 days.
Yeah.
You know, like it was always weekends that we hung out together, and then I always had to be back at work on Sunday.
Right.
And I stayed at a
Friend's house.
Just optics and just trying to like be really careful of like our own integrity. He was on staff as an youth intern. So all of that, you have to kind of think for yourself too. And like, how are we even going to be examples, like keep you, you know, protected in what you were doing in the church, and like, okay, Bethany's coming to town, where is she staying? And I think a lot of times too, in the world that we live in today, that people don't think twice about, oh, my boyfriend's visiting for the weekend.
Yeah,
They're going to
absolutely.
stay at my apartment with me. And, you know, you might not do anything, but it's the optics of that.
Yeah. I mean, you have the optics, but you also have the fact of good luck.
Yeah.
I mean,
Temptation.
I mean,
Forget
why
it.
put yourself in
Yeah.
that predicament? I mean, that
Yeah.
seems not really good.
Yeah.
Kind of challenging.
Yeah, and I think like a lot of times too, it's like asking yourself the question, or your relationship, assessing it and be like, is this relationship pure?
Yeah.
That to me is a great question to ask, because it will provide all the answers that you need.
Yeah.
So you're saying, is this relationship pure? Is that not based on like You mean like regardless of whether anything physical is going on, but is it pure based on like what the motives are or like the
it
intent?
kind of like is an open question to be like, is your conversations pure? Like, what are you talking about? Like, what topics are you talking about? Because sometimes even our conversations can be kind of like, oh, I'm going to test the waters or like ask you a question. And it can lead to thoughts, which thoughts lead to behaviors, right? Feelings lead to thoughts, thoughts lead to behavior. So it's just like a trail that kind of just runs itself. But, you know, in your thoughts, are you pure in your thoughts? Are you pure in your intentions? Are you pure in these things that you believe? Are they transferring into like your romantic relationship?
I want to ask this because not everybody has and again, I will call it a privilege to have that long distance thing. Ashley and I had that too because she was finishing up school. And so I was up here, she was in Lynchburg. And so we had a pretty good season of long distance. Not everybody has that. And I actually kind of feel like the courtship thing, for all of the stigma it's, you know, that's been attached to it because of the purity culture issues, I feel like the courtship thing was supposed to take the place of a long distance relationship, like to where you had the relationship, you had opportunities for conversation and interaction, but you didn't really ever have the environment where that misbehavior could happen. Because the idea of the courtship, at least from what I understand, is you're doing things in groups. You're out together. It's like everybody, there's not this pairing off kind of thing.
Right.
So, you know, for people that can't have, and I mean, going all the way back a few hundred years before there were phones and all this other stuff, the courtship was the same thing. It was like you're at social gatherings together and you're at family things together, but there isn't this like...
You're promenading.
Yeah, but you're never off like by yourselves, able to even have an impure conversation because there are ears everywhere.
Yeah.
Yes. You know,
So is that reproducible in a realistic way, or because of all the privacy of digital conversations, do you think that whole concept has just gone by the wayside?
Yeah. No, I don't think so. I think that you can kind of adapt it to like having people in your life that you trust and that you can allow speak into your life. Like we were saying, it's hard to kind of hear stuff from your parents. But if you have...
At that age, we were talking about like...
At that age, like at a younger age, like maybe they're just starting dating and like you're, you know, mom and dad are saying, I can't do this, I can't do that, or you shouldn't do that. But having another voice in your life that can kind of speak to and is your eyes and ears in a way of just checking in and being like, how's your relationship going? You know?
So we started off the conversation by saying something like how part of the issue of the past is that we heard a lot of no's. We heard a lot of don'ts. We heard a lot of you can'ts. But we didn't hear as many whys. Yeah. So to get back to the question of how far is too far, because I think that was probably like kind of the root question. Instead of just saying, okay, this is too far and this isn't too far, like what are the whys? Why is one person's too far, maybe not somebody else's too far? Yeah. And is it? Or are we like way off in saying that?
I think that's one of the questions that I have, because I feel like some of it is conviction based, besides like obvious like sex, right? Yeah. I mean, I think a lot leading up to that can be conviction based. Like for some, maybe, I think when we're talking about purity, some people kissing, that is too much. And it's just like has to be like a hard no, a hard line.
Because of what? Because once they go there, it's too far to come back.
I think it goes back to like, you know, we all grew up in the Christian culture, like holding hands leads to babies. Like that, you know, like that mindset.
Yeah.
Step one.
You know, step one, if you hold hands, you're going to have babies. Like, you know, and so I think a lot of it too has to do with what we were taught and the way we were programmed to think about this stuff. Because you have people that were really bought into the purity culture and the whole I kiss dating goodbye and all of that stuff. And then you had those who really didn't. Yeah. And who just kept dating and were like, hey, we're going to, you know, I don't see this as wrong or right. I'm just going to keep doing this, you know, and be able to do that. But I believe that a lot of the boundaries that were placed, like we were talking, some of it was fear driven, you know, like, you know, if I kiss this girl or if I kiss this guy, I might like get struck down by God or, you know, I'm going to get an STD or, you know, this or that. But to answer Zac's question, I think, a lot of it can be a mixture of the conviction that you do feel about the Holy Spirit, and then the comfort level of your open communication of where you're at, with those type of things. Because, some people holding hands is too much. Like, they can't do that. Kissing is like off the table. And then others not, know. And so I think you play with fire, you will get burned.
Yeah.
So I think that you have to be very cognitive of the fact that this, like, knowing that this can lead to something more that we might end up violating what God wants for us to do. And so you have to be very careful about that in testing, because I just think that's really the way to go. I didn't buy into the whole culture of I kiss dating goodbye.
We didn't either. Even my parents didn't.
Yeah, like
were
we
kind of
weren't
not really into that.
Even with my parents being pastors, this wasn't something. I think someone gave us the book and we never read it.
Yeah.
Like we just threw it on the bookshelf.
The same. I think we got that book too.
There was several books that came out in that season about that. But I think there were really the question, how far is too far? I think that could even be maybe the wrong question that you're asking. And the question is how do I stay pure and holy before God? What do I think is honorable before Him, rather than how far is too far? Because when we say how far is too far, we're placing a limitation upon ourselves to try to control the flesh.
Yeah.
And the flesh is very hard to control. But if
we want to push the envelope.
And so in each time you're going to go further and further and pushing that envelope. And so more than saying, okay, how far is too far, is how far is it that it's going to violate the honor and the holiness of purity?
Right.
And I think that's the real question, is what is purity? What does that mean to me? What does that look like for me?
Right. And you have like the scripture that says, don't awake love until it's right time, till it's due season. And that's a hard thing, because once that is awoken.
Let's just say that.
I think woke is the word you're looking for.
Woke, yeah.
Once that's woke,
we're all about the woke.
It's very hard to go back from there.
Yeah.
So the question, this came in from somebody who's an adult, and I think that there's a big difference too between raising teenagers and then saying to them, okay, you need to operate based on your convictions, and what does purity mean to you? Well, I know if I had been asked as a teenage boy what purity meant to me, I would have been like, it's starting with
What would you say, Zach?
I would say it was probably starting with a clean piece of toilet paper, instead of a dirty one. It's like, I don't have this like rubric, and I don't know if everybody does either. I understand conviction, and I understood it then, but I think that a lot of sexual intention is rooted in more than just good old-fashioned teenage horniness.
Yeah.
And I think that, understanding that it's a complicated matter. Purity shouldn't be. I mean, by right, it should just be, okay, it's like retaining innocence. It's like not being exposed to a lot of these things. I heard one youth pastor say, I think it was a youth leader, maybe not a youth pastor, but a youth leader, say one time that it's the line when your heart starts to race. I thought that was interesting.
I don't know.
It was
if I'm
like
gonna buy that.
it was the idea of like, well, if holding hands, and you're fine, it's kind of like what you're saying, like, okay, how far is too far? It's different for different people. But when your heart starts to race, it's like invoking something in you that is awakening, like love.
I remember being a middle schooler, and it'd be like a boy walks in and your heart would race.
Your heart flutters, you get butterflies.
Okay, not that kind of heart racing.
I think for boys maybe it's different.
Maybe something different. Yeah, okay.
It's a different racing.
I think it's like, because there's an appetite there. There's like a sexual appetite, and I think that when we get a taste of something, you want more.
Yeah.
And it's where do you draw the line so that you're not driven more by the want than by wisdom.
I think you need the Lord. I think we can't do that like
Jesus.
on
Praise the
our
Lord.
own. Like, we need the strength of the Holy Spirit. Like, if you're not connecting with the Lord and asking Him to help you in these things, you are not going to be able to resist.
Good luck.
You're not going to be able to resist. I think, though, too, what can be misconstrued or like kind of so gray, it can become not gray, but like the definition of love is like, I love you, so I want to show you in this way, or you don't love me because you don't do this, or it's the definition of that can
So
get
true.
in your mind of, oh, he wants this because he loves me, and he wants me to show him that he loves me in this way. So that must be what I need to do to show him that he loves me.
Absolutely.
And I think that it's a mutual, like, if you're not in a relationship that he's not asking you to do things that you're not even feeling, that is that line. Like, yeah, there is that line. Your heart can race in that way too. It's like, but you want to please him, or you want to show him that you love him. But a guy that loves the Lord and that loves you isn't going to ask you to go somewhere that you're not comfortable going.
Yeah. But even a guy who really loves the Lord in that moment, it's a bad time to be like, but what do you think the Lord thinks? It's like not a good time. It's like make those decisions at another time.
You have to have those conversations before, I think. And then you always have to kind of put yourself in check and don't go somewhere that you're going to be tempted to.
Yeah. Well, one of the things I mentioned last night is, in Daniel, one of the most powerful scriptures, I think, is that it talks about that Daniel resolved in his mind the answers to questions before they were asked. And I think dating is a lot like that too. You have to resolve in your mind with the Lord, this is where I'm going to be at. This is the lines I'm not going to cross. Having boundaries, like we're not going to be alone in a car at night. You've already made up your mind to make those happen so that when the pressure is on, you're like, nope, I'm not doing that. I'm not compromising that. But I'll be honest, man, like dating now, I can't imagine just how difficult and how hard that is compared to when we were, even 15, 16, 17 years ago.
Right.
Being able to kind of navigate that, because there's so much sexualization of things, more even, it's like every year it gets worse, where all this happens. And then, all of the apps and, that you can have on your phone to be able to go and, like we have a lot of young people in our life that are single, and they tell us stories constantly about the dating apps and this and that, and how, if you think about the concept, swipe up or swipe left, swipe right, it's literally all based on the physicality of that person. Am I attracted to you? No. Boom, gone. Boom, gone. Oh, I'm attracted to you. Yeah. So automatically, in the cultural world that we're living, everything is programmed to how you look and how you present yourself rather than who you are. And I just can't imagine having to navigate that in today's culture. It's got to be very difficult.
I think it's another cultural phenomenon that I don't think anyone saw coming. And some people say it's with the dawn of like the porn like explosion over the last couple decades. But I think that for historically speaking, there was always this like gender specific expectation that guys were always going to push for it and girls were always going to push against it.
Yeah.
And I know like going back to like the 50s and stuff, it was always like the girl's job to say no.
Yeah.
Because everybody just knew guys were going to just like want more than they should have.
Yeah.
And so the self-control thing was on like, again, I'm not just trying to say like this is every single person, but historically I think that was the critical mass sort of believe that way. And again, this was kind of what accompanied girls getting bad names when stuff would happen. And all of a sudden, a girl's reputation was so marred unfairly and double standardly because the girl was supposed to be the one saying no.
Promiscuous,
When guys, it was just like this this is just what guys do.
Guys do, yeah.
But I think that one thing we've seen, and again, I've heard it sort of blamed on the dawn of the porn revolution, but that now guys are actually like statistically less pursuant of sexual activity than even girls are.
Yeah.
Pre-marriage. So
where'd you hear that from?
A couple sources. I can't remember if it was part of that.
You don't think that's because of pornography?
That's what they're saying. That's what
You're
I'm saying.
Because of pornography, they're less.
It could be because it's not.
Sense.
No one's saying like it's 100% because of 2 + 2 = 4. But I think it's people are like saying, okay, is this why, or does it have to do with the demasculinity of males and more of the feminine movement, the rise of feminine dominance or leadership and stuff? And so it's like women are assuming other roles and even in a relationship, like a guy and a girl. And now women, instead of having their sexuality suppressed by this social expectation that they should be the ones, making sure that the relationship doesn't go too far, they're the ones driving it and saying, no, like we'll do this now. There's no reason why we shouldn't, blah, blah, blah. So I think that there are a couple things. If you approach it from the porn side, then it's like, well, guys are having this need met or gratifying this on one side, and they don't need physical sexuality with a real person. If you say it from the other side, then it's, the feminist movement. But either way, with that happening, I think it really throws the traditional mindset, anybody that comes from the traditional mindset, anybody that was raised in the traditional mindset who's now raising kids their own, nobody's thinking that girls are going to be pursuant of that. They're just expecting guys are going to be the ones, and then the girls are going to say no. But I think, again, if you're raising kids out there, these are all things that, vary.
Well, and even in our youth ministry, I'll tell you, the girls are more pursuant and aggressive than they have ever been that I've ever seen in youth ministry.
What do you guys think it is?
I think you're right on with a lot of the things that you said, and there's more of an empowering, because it used to be if a girl sleeps around a lot, she's a hoe, but, and no one says anything about the guy. But now things are shifting really dramatically in that, where you have this whole, I don't want to even call it women empowering, but this whole sexuality now of embracing going from guy to guy, just how it was for years for guys to be able to do that. And there was no harm in their reputation. Now women have no problem being able, I think
it's just more encouraged now, and it's more loud.
You're gonna
go explore, see what you want, see what you like.
Well, and let's just be honest too. Culture has made this fully acceptable. I'm going to get on my soapbox real quick. So, The Bachelor and The Bachelorette, right? Yeah. If you did that in regular dating world, you would definitely be a player or a whore.
Yeah, I mean,
if you were I have 16 women that I'm going to choose from, and I'm going to kiss all of them, and I'm going to date all of them, or I have 16 men. If you did that in the regular context of relationships that we live in every day, you're going to be marked as a whore or a player, But what happens is culturally, this has become so acceptable.
And we're we love it.
Yeah,
it's such a solid relationship.
And they're so
great.
Yeah,
what the?
And you're like, no, he just kissed 2 other people in that morning. And,
2 minutes ago.
2 minutes ago. And so, but what happens is there's a glorification that cultural has brought to our forefront that I really believe is a spiritual battle of the concept of relationships between one man and one woman, where you have options is the way to go. Many options. You date around, you don't just date now. And so I think some of that plays into it as well, where all of these kids are growing up in a culture where, it's nothing for a superstar to go from boyfriend to boyfriend to boyfriend to boyfriend. And you have these pop stars who just date around and they'll have 5 or 6 relationships within a few years. And if they did that in real life, again, they would be marked.
Yeah.
They would be judged. They'd have the scarlet letter thrown on them. But because of who they are, and so we buy into, I can do this then. I can just date around and it be perfectly acceptable and perfectly okay. So I think we've seen a shift culturally in entertainment and what we're producing that we look at, these could be healthy relationships. And you're looking at that and anyone that has a normal mind and a normal brain, you're this is very dysfunctional.
Yeah.
But it's being portrayed as what is functional because it's more of an optional thing than it is.
So it might be worth a part of a conversation then to say, when you're throwing out words like dating, I think you also mean sleeping with all these people. Yeah. And I want to differentiate this because I actually feel like another cultural maybe phenomenon that I'm seeing it now among young adults and even maybe a little bit lower, where it's people aren't really dating anymore. It's they're hooking up, because thanks to the apps and that kind of thing. But people aren't just spending time with people to find out more about them. And I remember just within the last couple of years, I've had conversations with parents who have young adult age kids. Maybe some of this is the residual effect of raising them in conservative, hyper-conservative, purity culture environments. But it's we've lost the art of healthy dating. Yeah. And I want to revisit that. I want to kiss dating hello. You know what I'm saying? Because I
sounds like a good book title.
Yeah, I'm going to write that. Micah, you write the foreword for me.
I got you.
I feel and actually we were just sitting around the table with a couple of former Zion students yesterday and talking about how in Bible school, which people joke about Bible school, it's the MRS degree, ring by spring,
ring
the whole
by spring.
all this stuff, and it's how many people just go to get married. But one thing that I think is interesting is in Bible school, I remember it was not uncommon to date everybody once or twice, and all dating was, hey, let's go meet at a coffee shop.
Yeah.
Maybe not even drive together. Hey, meet me somewhere. Let's sit down, let's talk, or let's go for a walk.
Yeah.
and we would go for a couple of walks, like at Barrington Beach, or like it's like the idea of like, hey, I'm going to invest enough time to know if this is somebody that I want to know more.
Yeah.
And usually it only takes a couple of conversations. But I feel like somehow the group thing has eclipsed because of the safety in numbers and because of the social media, this crazy thing where it like broke people's ability to be vulnerable in real life because there is an identity that's not real but that is them. Online. And so I'll stop talking in a second. But the idea is it's almost like we need to get back to like a one-on-one conversation that even reveals whether or not we want to get to know this person more. Because without that, where do you go? How do you know?
Yeah.
I think it's good to know ages that you're talking about too. I think
that's college. I'm talking about college.
You're talking about college and like adulthood, and I think that is right. I just want to make sure we're clarifying for parents that are raising like teenagers. I don't think the sending them out 2 by 2 is a good idea
Jesus
at that age.
did it.
I know.
I'm just kidding.
But they were adults. He sent out adults. I do think the group thing is better for teenagers.
Well, and I think,
of course,
talking to parents all the time about this specific topic, they're always asking, like, what is your advice about dating? What is this? What is that? And my biggest thing is like, as a parent, your job is to protect, your job is to oversee, your job is to, bring accountability and all that. So being able just to know who they're dating, even knowing I'm a huge advocate for parents knowing who's in their kids' lives, knowing who their friends are, knowing who their friends' parents are, knowing
100%.
like all of that. Because
who are they online with?
Yeah, who they're online. Like, ask the questions, be in their business.
Get on their phones.
Get on their phone. Like I said, there is your invasion. It's invasion of privacy. You have no privacy as a child.
Yeah.
Right.
Like if you live in your parents' house and they pay your bills and they pay for your phone, you don't own anything. You really don't. And so being the parent, you have the full right to be able to do that. And even in their dating relationships, being able to set the time, like, hey, have them back by 9 o'clock or have this or set up those boundaries because you're protecting your own child.
And our boys know that we scroll through their texts.
Yeah.
We read their text conversations. And I know there may be some parents out there listening to this like horrified that it's an invasion of their privacy. But it's like, since when did a kid ever do a smart thing with privacy?
Yeah.
It's like we're setting them up for failure.
Yeah. Absolutely are.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And I have some friends that actually, they're leading into their 30s and they're still single, and they're like, where are the men out there, right?
So
the men that I'm waiting for or I want, that are like checking off all the boxes here, because they would meet these guys on these apps and they're not who they say they are.
Yeah.
And I think the downfall too of these apps are, you kind of know everything before you even have that first conversation.
Right.
I know what you do because you list a profile, right? And so you
write somebody off because of one thing they have in their profile, and they're really not even that like stuck on that thing. It's just something they thought was like interesting.
Oh yeah, red flags. We can talk about that too.
I think the danger can be like, then I'm just going to give up. So I'm going to be a hermit and isolate and not meet anyone and not date anyone. We're not saying that dating is bad. We're just saying like those are good experiences, but how are you connecting? What's the motive? Like, are you in it to hook up, or are you in it to genuinely get to know someone?
Right.
And, find out what their values are. Find out like where the belief system is. Like, do you align in some things and then agree to disagree?
How did you guys meet?
Hey everybody, it's Ben here. This has been such a fun episode so far, and actually there's another 30 minutes to go, but that will be coming up next week on Our House. We thank you for tuning in. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, tell your friends, tell your neighbor, tell the postman, tell everybody all about Our House A to Z. We'll see you next Friday on Our House.
This is Messer. And I'm Willa. This is Our House from A to Z. Thanks for coming over.
Well, isn't that special?
Yeah.